All right, cadets, come on in and grab a seat. Welcome to the Soil Library. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're used to the training yards, right? The polished armor, the sharp ring of steel, the standard military drills. But today, we're going to look at warfare entirely differently. As a fellow Novus student here at the library, I'm going to be guiding this explainer on our nonviolent agricultural defense strategies against demonic forces. And yes, you heard me absolutely correctly. We are using agriculture as a literal form of defense. We're going to dig into the life and teachings of Teren Malvar, the brown-handed master, and see exactly how the Order of the Soil Wardens proved that dirt, seeds, and ledgers are just as potent as swords when you're fighting the crowns of famine. Okay, so here's the roadmap for today's explainer. We're going to start by redefining power and defense, break down the first seed oath, look at some actual field tactics, discuss how to cleanse corrupted battlefields, examine a couple of key historical case studies, and finally look at Teren's refusal of kingship. Right, let's kick things off with Section 1, Redefining Power and Defense, and the Anatomy of Famine. To really grasp our tactics, we have to completely redefine how we view an enemy attack. You see, a demonic famine isn't a battering ram. It's a slow-moving siege. It attacks the supply lines of the human heart through dependency and fear. To put yourselves in our boots as Soil Warden students, imagine spending your days not doing push-ups or sparring, but literally reading soil jars, sniffing old grain sacks, and trying to identify buried sickness in the dirt. Because here's the thing. The crowns of famine don't just march an army up to your gates. They poison the wells. They rot the fruit right before it ripens. They manipulate villages into fighting each other over a few baskets of rice. When human hearts are starving, they become incredibly easy to bend and conquer. So our training here is all about detecting that invisible siege. We learn that soil is basically the memory of the world, and the harvest, that's the memory answering back. This right here brilliantly illustrates the massive tactical contrast between our enemy and our founder. The demonic crowns, they demand immediate, destructive obedience. They'll promise you ridiculous, fast results, like wheat that miraculously grows in 20 days. But the hidden cost is the permanent sterility of the land. Teren Malvar's philosophy, on the flip side, relies on patient, communal abundance. Where demons manufacture scarcity and panic, we soil wardens plant surplus and count the seasons. We are literally fighting the speed of greed with the undeniable, unstoppable patience of the earth. Moving right along to Section 2, the first seed oath. Our entire strategic framework comes from one specific moment of refusal. Teren figured out pretty quickly that power gathered around food is incredibly dangerous. The story goes that a super wealthy nobleman offered Teren a pile of gold to bless his private orchard, right while the neighboring villages were actively starving. This guy just wanted vanity and hoarded wealth. So Teren took one of those gold coins, pushed it deep into the dirt, and planted a single barley seed right next to it. When the rains came, the seed sprouted into life. The gold coin? Yeah, it stayed completely dead. Teren looked at the nobleman and said, "Gold cannot become bread unless it first kneels to labor." This is exactly why we categorically refuse to bless fields for vanity or hoarded wealth. True power lies in feeding the needy, not serving some nobleman's pride. We don't march under royal banners. We carry a brown cord, mixed seeds, and a clean sickle. That's it. As cadets, you absolutely must memorize the 7 lines of the first seed oath. These are the unbreakable rules of engagement for every soil warden out there in the field. Listen up. 1. Keep seed from every harvest. 2. Return waste to the ground. 3. Share water before wine. 4. Leave borders for wild growth. 5. Never burn a field in anger. 6. Feed the exhausted before counting profit. And 7. Remember that the earth is not beneath you because it is lesser, but because it is carrying you. Now, traditional warriors used to laugh at these rules. They really did. Until Teren asked them, hey, how many battles can a soldier fight without food? The answer, obviously, is 0.
Let's jump to Section 3, Tactics of the Soil Wardens. I'll show you how this philosophy turns into actual, physical field maneuvers.
You all know about shield walls and palisades, right? Well, let me introduce you to the patient furrow. Teren's disciple, a former soldier named Odrin Clayhand, pulled off this exact technique to defend the seed stores of Nereth Fen. When fully armored demonic raiders charged the village, Odrin didn't build a stone wall. He just stood in a newly plowed field. He used the heavy clay itself. As the horses and men charged in, the plowed furrows literally shifted. The clay opened to a precise timing, rising around their boots. Not violently like a flood, but like gentle, patient hands closing in. The charging horses had to stop or risk breaking their legs, and the raiders sank safely to their knees in the mud, trapped without a single drop of blood shed. Odrin then casually disarmed them and fed them soup. I mean, what a brilliant move. But hey, physical defense is only half the battle. Another disciple, Mirala of the Millet Fields, proved that the simplest acts can completely unravel demonic deception. During a brutal famine, a demonic cult disguised as relief workers showed up offering villagers this incredibly fast-growing red wheat. It looked perfect, honestly, way too perfect. So Mirla just tossed a handful of the seeds on the ground to test them. Guess what? No bird pecked at them. Not a single ant would touch them. She showed us that by simply planting seeds and watching nature's reaction, we can expose demonic lies. That red wheat grew fast, sure, but it left the soil completely sterile. She taught us a crucial lesson. Demons love speed because it gives you absolutely no time to stop and ask what the price is. Morella was also a genius with mathematics and ledgers. She rigorously tracked agricultural health, proving that solid accounting is a massive weapon against engineered scarcity. If you look at this, by carefully mapping expected yields against missing laborers, she could pinpoint exactly where the unseen loss was hiding. And that unseen loss, almost always a demonic rot starting to take hold. Her ledgers saved just as many lives as any sword ever did. Because let's face it, you can't fight a famine if you have no idea what's actually sitting in your storehouses. Moving to Section 4. Cleansing corrupted battlefields and healing the earth. As future commanders, you have got to understand the concept of soil memory. Think of the earth as a giant historical ledger. It remembers every single drop of blood, every speck of ash, and every blast of demonic fire ever spilled on it. When a battlefield or a granary gets corrupted, you can't just set it on fire and walk away. Burning it just spreads the curse through the ash. In the town of Ilverine, Teren found a granary where the wheat had literally mutated into black demonic beetles. So here is the exact technical process he used to safely cleanse it. First, he put a single living seed right in the center of the ruined grain to bait and trap the beetles in a tight circle. Then he mixed that corrupted, squirming mess with heavy clay, manure, and very specific bitter healing herbs. He sealed that whole mixture tightly into solid bricks. Finally, he buried those bricks deep under a fallow field. He safely trapped the corruption, giving the earth the time it needed to patiently break it down. And that naturally brings us to the technical necessity of crop rotation and seasonal resting. We have strictly enforced protocols for ruined battlegrounds because the land has to be completely healed of its trauma before it can safely grow human food again. If demonic ash falls on a field and you plant food immediately, you're basically teaching the crops to surrender to despair. Instead, we followed this timeline. Year 1, we plant bitter cleansing grasses to literally pull out the poison. Year 2, deep-rooted flowers. Year 3, we bring in trees to stabilize the soil. It's only by year 4 that the soil memory is finally healed enough to plant grain for a human harvest. Taking the time to recover is a form of victory, cadets. Don't ever forget that.
Section 5. Let's look at some case studies in patience, specifically Halmora and Donaker.
We're going to examine 2 historical clashes where the sheer patience of the soil wardens completely broke the logic of demonic tyranny. First up, the Orchard of Broken Seasons near Halmora. Here, time itself was actually wounded by a demonic crown. It was wild. Trees were blooming in the dead of winter and then freezing to death, and the summer fruits were shrinking down to the size of tiny pebbles. The demon showed up and offered Teren endless, instant abundance if he would just agree to remove winter forever. Sounds like paradise, doesn't it? But Teren knew better. He immediately invoked a biting, cleansing frost to kill all those false summer blossoms. He looked right at the demon and said, "A tree that never rests becomes firewood." He proved that true agricultural health, and honestly, human health too, absolutely requires the deep rest of winter.
And then we have the Siege of the Black Sickle at Donaker. The demonic crown gathered this massive army to wipe out the valley's seed houses. The demon itself manifested as this colossal reaper made entirely of smoke and rusted blades, swinging a massive sickle to just slaughter the fields. Did Teren raise a shield? No. He casually poured a pouch of mixed seeds directly into a furrow. Instantly, this wildly diverse, tangled net of barley, millet, beans, and rye erupted right out of the soil. When the demon sliced one root, 10 more held firm. When it tried to poison a stalk, the neighboring plants just drew the poison away safely. This showed everyone how community diversity acts as literal, impenetrable armor, physically snapping a demonic blade in a massive tangle of living growth.
Finally, we reach Section 6, the refusal of kingship and the brown crown. The last and maybe the most crucial takeaway from this explainer is about what happens after you win and dealing with the massive temptation of absolute rule. Because what's truly mind-blowing is what Teren did when the liberated people tried to crown him as their king. You see that bronze circlet shaped like woven wheat? Teren took it, walked straight out into the middle of a field, and shoved it onto the head of an empty scarecrow. He flat out refused to be a king. Instead, he created the brown crown. It's not a physical object, it's a rotating community responsibility. Season to season, different villages take turns guarding the seed stores and managing the soil ledgers. He set it up this way to guarantee that no single ruler could ever monopolize the food supply. Because the moment a harvest master becomes a king, he'll start demanding the soil serve his throne. And like we've seen, power gathered around food is always a doorway for demons. So I'm going to leave you with Teren's final lesson, spoken from his deathbed in Nereth Fen. When you all march out of this library and into your military careers, I challenge you to keep these words echoing in your minds. Feed what can live, clean what has been poisoned, share what can save, begin again even when the field looks dead. It forces all of us to stop and ask a really difficult question. Does true defense actually start with the sharp edge of a sword, or does it start with the patient courage to plant a seed and begin again? Think on that, cadets. Class dismissed.